Good morning. The Hearing Board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is Tuesday, August 6, 2019. The time is 9:00 a.m., and we are meeting in the Hearing Board room in Diamond Bar. We have one matter on the calendar today, and that is Eastern Municipal Water District, case number 4937-57, for a status report and potential modification of the order for abatement in this. For the regular variance. I apologize for the regular variance in this matter. Who is representing Eastern Municipal?
Curtis Coleman.
Good morning, Mr. Coleman. And who is representing the executive officer?
Stacy Pruitt for the executive officer.
Good morning, Ms. Pruitt.
Good morning.
We have two new members of the board since the last time we met in this matter. And so I'm going to ask first, Dr. Bernstein, have you reviewed the hearing from June of 2018 and the papers, and do you feel you are prepared to hear this matter today?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Bernstein. And Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, same question.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, then I will ask anyone who wishes to be heard today or to testify in today's hearing, including members of the public who wish to be heard, to please rise at this time to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. We also received two documents from petitioner, and we're going to mark those right now. The first is a PowerPoint presentation, which is entitled The Case Number and Status Hearing. It's a multi-page document, and we will mark that as exhibit number 11. We also have received proposed additional increments of progress, which is the reason for today's status hearing, and we will mark that as exhibit number 12. And with that, Mr. Coleman, you may begin any opening statement you have at this time.
Yes, thank you. As you know, this from the previous hearings, this is this part of a major expansion project at the Temecula Valley Regional Water Reclamation Facility. But we're happy to report things are on track and on schedule so far. We are not seeking any modification to any of the dates in the order. We will be proposing, as you can see from the Exhibit 12, 3 additional increments of progress, which relate to the installation of the electric blowers and the removal of the engines. At this point, we're actually hopeful that the engines, both engines, can be removed at the same time in January. The issue, though, is there are things that could happen between now and then that could require one engine to remain operational just to assure adequate aeration to the digester. So we can commit to removing one engine by the end of January, but if things go as we hope they will go, both would be removed by the end of January, and at that point, there would not be any further ongoing violations. So we're here to try to explain why that is, and we're going to bring you up to date on the project and what has been done, what remains to be done, and the schedule for those steps, and hopefully you'll be able to see how our increments fit in with that schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. And through the testimony of witnesses, you'll be able to explain to the board whether, I thought I heard that you said you would actually be in compliance once the engines are removed, but I see in the increments of progress that the electric blowers would not. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. No one.
I will explain.
Yeah,
we will explain that. Essentially, they are they are going to be ducting air. They've completed the new Plant 3 digester and aeration system. So what the contractor is proposing is to duct air from that over to Plant number 2 digester and provide aeration that way. We don't know for sure if that will be sufficient or if there's some hiccup in that process. We may need to keep one engine available along with the other electric blower to provide sufficient aeration.
Okay.
But that is the current plan.
Okay, and I'm sure the witnesses will
Yes.
illuminate that a little more. Thank you. Ms. Pruitt, your opening.
Good morning. Staff has informed me that, to the best of their knowledge and their understanding, that Eastern Municipal Water District is on schedule. And so we're prepared to listen to their presentation today and to see if we have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Coleman, you may present your first witness.
Yes, I call Allison Torres. Ms. Torres, would you please state your name and spell your name for the record?
Allison Torres, Alison, last name Torres.
Actually, before I get started, I'd like to incorporate the record from the previous hearings into the record for today's hearing.
Any objection, Ms. Pruitt?
No objection.
We will incorporate all evidence and testimony and proceedings from the June 2018 hearing, and that's also due to the fact that both new members also have viewed those
Yes.
those hearings. That hearing. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Torres, were you sworn as a witness a few moments ago?
Yes.
And you understand you're testifying under oath?
Yes.
And what is your position with Eastern Municipal Water District?
I'm the Senior Air Quality Compliance Analyst for our Environmental Services Department.
And how long have you held that position?
About 7 years as a senior.
And what is Eastern Municipal Water District, and what services does it provide?
Eastern Municipal Water District, also referred to as EMWD, we are a special district providing essential public services to supply drinking water, sewage treatment, and recycled water, as well as irrigation that's used for irrigation to our customers in Riverside County.
Now, in the variance order issued on June 28th, 2018, increment of progress, C2, capital C2, required EMWD to come back to the hearing board for a status hearing / modification of variance hearing. Have you prepared a PowerPoint presentation that gives some background on the blower electrification project for the new hearing board members and describes what has happened since the variance took effect on January 1st of this year?
Yes, I have.
And may I just interrupt for a moment? I probably should have done this at the beginning of the hearing for the benefit of new members, just to orient the board as to why we're here today and what standard we're reviewing this status hearing and modification hearing under is this regular variance was granted back in June, as we know, in 2018, and so the board at that time was able to make all of the 6 findings for a variance. The variance, however, began in January of this year, 2019, and will run through June of 2020, making it a variance of greater than 1 year. As a result, the board is required to adopt increments of progress that are designed to be times or dates with which the petitioner needs to comply before the final compliance date, but due to uncertainties in the project schedule, we were not able to do that at that time, which is why we're here today for the status hearing, and which is why we are reviewing additional increments of progress. So that's the standard with which we're looking. It's merely to have, I guess, good cause to modify the regular variance to adopt additional increments of progress. And with that, thank you, Mr. Coleman. You may proceed.
Okay. So, Ms. Torres, why don't you launch into your PowerPoint presentation and give us an update on where things stand.
Okay, will the presentation show
Oh, we
on
need
the
it. There we go.
screen? Thank you. So again, we are here today to provide an update on our Temecula Valley Regional Water Reclamation Facility, specifically with the 2 biogas engines at this facility. I'd like to give a little bit of background on EMWD, especially for the new members. We provide essential public services to about 816,000 people in our service area, which includes several disadvantaged communities. You can see a map of our service area there on the right. We provide potable, which is drinking water, and recycled water services to our customers in the 555 square mile service area. We do implement renewable energy projects and demonstrations, and we have a focus on energy management programs as well. So why are we here today? As mentioned, we'd like to provide a status update for this case, which is 493757. We don't wish to make any modifications to the variance order. However, we respect that there are some additional increments of progress that will be proposed. Just to provide some case history, we testified to the hearing board on June 28, 2018. Specifically for these 2 biogas engines to continue operation past the January 1st, 2019 deadline in Rule 1110.2. The hearing board granted relief for these 2 engines at the Temecula facility to continue operation until June 30th, 2020, and the increments of progress require a status hearing. So I'd like to give a little background on the blower electrification project. Currently, the aeration basins for our Plant 1 and Plant 2 processes, they're provided air by internal combustion engines to drive the aeration air blowers. You can see on that picture on the top, that's a image of an aeration basin. Aeration is a critical step in the wastewater process, and so any impact to the supply air, it can be detrimental to the process. So Eastern embarked on this project to electrify the blowers at this facility to replace the engines with electric blowers to provide this aeration air. And ultimately, this project will reduce our number of permitted IC engines at this facility as well as in our district and air emissions. It will also provide us greater operational flexibility in our aeration process, and the planned completion for the blower electrification is June of 2020. So what is the current project status? Well, we completed final design for the electrification earlier this year, and that was variance increment of progress number 1.
And for the increment of progress, it is, can be found on the current findings and decision, page 10. They're C1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
Is this the right presentation? I'm so sorry. I think that this is the wrong version of our presentation.
Would you like to go off the record for a moment?
Just for a moment.
Yeah, why don't we do that? We're off the record, and you can take your time.
Yeah, that's from the status hearing. How did what happened to it? How in the world did it move over there?
Into a different location.
Okay, let me go to the correct, or you can go in presentation mode. Okay, I'm ready, thank you. That was from the status hearing.
They moved around.
Okay, we're back on the record.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm like, there's some changes that are not showing here. So we are currently in the final design phase. We completed the final design phase in February of 2019. That was increment of progress number 1, so we were on target with that completion. Then we entered into the bid the contract bid and award phase, where we select a contractor, and that was completed in May of 2019. And that was our variance increment of progress number 2. So we were on target with that as well. We are now in the commencing into the construction phase, and in this phase, the biogas engines will ultimately be removed from service. So the status of that is coming, and that will satisfy variance condition number 6. The target completion date for that is June 30th of 2020. So I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on the construction phase that we are commencing. As I mentioned, we awarded the contract, and that was on May 1st. We then entered into and scheduled a pre-job meeting with the contractor to review the project, the expectations, different safety aspects of the project, and that was done on May 15th of 2019. The contractor is then required to do various pre-construction steps, which includes the construction baseline schedule, different safety submittals, and things of that nature. And so that construction schedule, Eastern reviewed and responded to it in July. We are now entering into the submittal and procurement phase, as well as the construction phase. So in the submittals and procurement, that is ongoing throughout the project. What happens is the contractor submits documentation on the various equipment that they plan to install and procure. And so there's a series of submittals that they're required to provide throughout the project. So once the contractor submits the documentation, EMWD has an opportunity to review and confirm that they're meeting the requirements of the specifications for the project. So there can be multiple review cycles if EMWD has comments that the contractor needs to address. Upon approval of the submittal, that is when the contractor basically has the green light to proceed with procurement if there's any procurement in elements in that submittal. So there are some key components for this electrification project that require procurement, which includes some aeration piping, various electrical components such as motor controllers, switchgear, transformers, transfer switches, and then a standby generator. So I do want to highlight some operational and critical path elements and updates for this project. So during the design and now the construction, there are several elements that needed to be included and considered in those steps. This is a small image of the facility that shows the aeration basins. So we needed to ensure that during the design and executed in the construction that the aeration supply to these Plant 1 and Plant 2 aeration basins is not interrupted. We also needed to make sure that we maintain a heat source for our digesters because currently the exhaust heat from the engines is utilized to provide heat to the digester vessels. We also needed to ensure that we expedited the duration of this project in light of the 1110.2 deadline. So some critical elements of this project that have been completed. In order to electrify this blower building, as mentioned in the previous hearings, we needed to have a new SCE service from Edison and commissioning of a substation. And those elements were included in our 23 MGD expansion that was completed this year. In addition to that element of the 23 MGD expansion, the additional treatment train, which we refer to as Plant 3, included aeration blowers as well. And so those blowers were commissioned in June of this year, along with the 60-day test of the new process train. So that is a critical element to this project as well. So this is just an image of the Plant 3 blower building. And then lastly, another critical element is procurement of the actual aeration blowers that will be installed as part of this electrification project. Those can be a very long lead item, and so EMWD made efforts to procure those during the design phase. So some key future milestones that are upcoming here as we commence this construction phase. include a completion of an interconnection to that plant 3 for aeration. So if we can connect the plant 2, which is this building here, which is where the engines are currently located, to our plant 3 blower building, then we can, will ease some pressure during the construction period. In addition, after the completion of that interconnection, we will commence removal of the blowers and the associated piping, and ultimately remove the engines and install the electric blowers and the new piping for these new blowers. So those are some of the critical future milestones for this construction. So I do want to show just a milestone schedule here of some of the different phases that will happen between now and next June. So this does show the contract award and notice to proceed, where the submittals are ongoing process. And we are in the process of commencing the installation of the new interconnection aeration pipe, which includes various tie-ins to our existing process. And that the success of that is contingent on aeration pipe delivery. We will need to install a temporary boiler for digester heating once the engines are removed. We need to have that in place. We will then begin removing some of the existing blower components and piping. We will remove at least one engine, install the new electric blower system and piping, new electrical equipment, and then other elements of this. So that is the key milestones. So I do want to highlight some of our expedited efforts to date. We are committed to expedite the engine removal, and there's several things that we've done to hopefully illustrate this. As I mentioned previously, we did pre-procure the electric blowers themselves. We identified an expedited solution to address the aeration demands during construction, which includes that aeration connection. We have the right staff with the right expertise, overseeing the project, which includes staff from our environmental group, our construction group, engineering, operations, all making sure that this project moves forward smoothly. We have reoccurring progress meetings that are starting between EMWD and the contractors. And despite our efforts, there is always potential for unexpected situations to occur as we enter into this construction phase. And some of these can include procurement delays with some of the other components, such as the electrical gear, unexplained underground utilities. If you may recall from the previous hearings, this is a smaller footprint facility with a lot crammed into a small space, so there is always unexpected things that can happen. Weather delays and just verifying everything goes smoothly with the aeration supply from Plant 3.
Let me interrupt you here for a minute. And can you provide a little bit more detail with regard to what is involved, or how the contractor thinks that it can potentially expedite the removal of the engines by the Plant 3 aeration connection?
Sure. So initially, during the design, we had to confirm, make sure that we didn't have any interrupted, I can't talk, aeration supply. And so initially, we needed to make sure we could phase the removal of the engines and sequence them. But with this interconnection, basically, we will install a pipeline that a part of it will be above grade, and then there will be some underground connections and tie-ins. So there are some elements that need to be coordinated with operations. But this aeration pipe will connect our Plant 1 and Plant 2 aeration basins to our Plant 3 aeration.
And if this goes all according to plan and no hitches, would it then be possible to take both engines out of service at the same time?
Yes, so the plan would be once we complete their aeration connection and commission it, then the removal of the blowers and the associated piping, we can do all the engines at the same time rather than having to sequence them.
But do you have concerns that there could be glitches or other issues that arise that might result in having to keep one engine there to operate?
Yes, we need, there's always things that can happen, and we can't be sure at this point that that it will work seamlessly. So we need to have the ability to stage the removal of the engines should it be necessary. Until the new electric blowers are installed and operating, we need to plan for worst case in order to assure that there is no interruption to the aeration supply.
But would it be your intent to remove the engines as soon as it's possible to do so while still assuring the an adequate aeration supply to plants 1 and 2?
Yes. Should I continue with my PowerPoint?
Okay. So you can pick up.
I just have a little bit more in the PowerPoint. If you could please switch the screen.
Can I just, I didn't want to interrupt you, but you're on it, and I just want to make sure we all understand. The proposed increments of progress that have been marked Exhibit 12, which phases in the 2 different engines, the electric blowers, that assumes that the pipeline to plant number 3 fails. That's the worst case scenario. And then if it works, we would see that those increments of progress or those dates, we would see a more rapid timeline of taking the both offline.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
I think just to clarify, it's the end of January date, or January 31st, it could be 1 engine or both engines, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's the,
And the 1 engine assumes that that pipeline does not work? The aeration pipeline from, okay.
Right.
And that's what you're proposing, and then the good news would be
That
if
we
it
would-
does work,
Yes.
which is what you're planning. Okay, thank you.
okay, why don't we pick up and finish up with the PowerPoint, and then we can talk about the increments of progress.
Okay, so I just wanted to recap some of the critical construction considerations for this project as a whole. This electrification project includes new electrical to the Plant 1-2 blower building. That's a single building, but it supplies air for Plant 1 and Plant 2, so it can be a little confusing when you say it. But as mentioned in the previous hearing, this building was not, didn't have adequate electrical supply to sustain these new blowers, so adding new electrical is part of this project, and it had to come after the new electrical service and substation from Edison. So there are components that need to be procured in order to facilitate this, these new electrical upgrades, so to speak. The coordination needs to be made with operations for tie-ins and electrical tie-ins and things of that nature. So those are some critical construction elements. Also, digester heating, as I mentioned, we need to make sure that we have adequate heat to heat our digesters, and currently the engines supply that exhaust heat, and so this project includes a backup small 219 exempt boiler to provide heat during the winter months, depending on how cold it is. And as mentioned several times, we have to make sure that we don't have interruption to our aeration supply. But the airline construction to Plant 3 will supply this air during construction. So this is the what we are hoping for and is the best route logistically for construction phasing. And so we are moving forward with that. So these critical components do require coordination between our operations and our contractor. I mentioned we have a lot of staff oversight to make these things run smoothly. Plant shutdowns for tie-ins, especially for the new aeration pipe. And then, of course, addressing any unexpected delays promptly so that it doesn't impact our schedule. Some of the ongoing notification and reporting that we have done and will continue to do is we have monthly update reports that we provide to AQMD staff as well as the hearing board. We provide these on the 7th of each month. And we've been doing these reports since the last hearing, the month following the last hearing in July of 2018. We also provide our excess emission fees and the reports associated with that, and those are submitted quarterly within 15 days of the end of the quarter. And so we've submitted the Q1 and Q2 of 2019. Again, my name is Allison Torres, and I also have Al Javier here if there's any questions from the board.
Okay. Now, did you, in consultation with your management and operations people, review this baseline schedule? Let me ask for back for a minute. Now, you talked about a baseline construction schedule. Is that something that the contractor can change some dates if issues arise, problems arise that would result in some delays?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a final etched in stone type of construction schedule?
No, but they do have pressure from staff internally to ensure there are no, to try to minimize any delays, but.
Okay, but in light of that, did you review the baseline construction schedule and determine that there are some additional increments of progress that would reflect progress toward attainment that you can commit to?
Yes.
Okay, and are those shown on Exhibit 12?
Yes.
Okay, and the new ones specifically would be the complete removal of at least one engine by January 31st, 2020, commence installation of electric blowers by February 28th, 2020, and complete installation of at least one electric blower by April 30th, 2020?
Yes.
And given the situation with the sort of uncertainty right now about when whether one engine or two engines will be removed by in January, would there be an issue if the status of that engine removal situation was required to be included in the monthly reports that you're required to provide now?
If we provided an update on the removal in that report? No, there's no problem with that.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Ms. Pruitt, do you have any questions for Ms. Torres?
May I have one moment, please?
Yes.
I have none, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Torres, are there other elements that are within the control of Eastern Municipal to move this project quicker or to have delays, including, for example, let me start with one at a time. Are there any additional permitting or permits that are required that you know of?
The only permit that's required is for the diesel standby generator. That's currently in, we've submitted the application for that. It's currently in process. I actually recently reviewed a draft. So since this is a Title V facility, it will take at least 45 more days to get that permit because of EPA review. But the generator will be the later part of the project, so I don't see any issues receiving that permit in time.
But you've already submitted an application regardless? Yes. Okay. And there's no permitting that's required by any city or
Not that I'm aware of.
any other agency? Okay. What about procuring any parts? Is there anything that still has not been procured that we should have a date for ensuring that those pieces are procured?
Well, there are elements for the electrical portion that require procurement, like with the transformers and things like that. But the contractor is commencing the submittal phase for that to start the procurement at the early part of the project. I don't think an increment of progress is needed for that.
And just so I give just to frame a little bit these questions, is that these are good increments that you have proposed. There's a lot of time between now and the end of January of 2020. So if there's anything that the increments of progress that could be added, that could ensure that you are moving quickly and expeditiously towards that date of January 31st, that would be good to know. So your feeling is the transformers and any additional equipment is already moving along quickly. Is that the procurement of those items?
Yes, but we are just entering into the construction phase, so I don't know that the submittals have been approved for those components yet. I'd have to try to reach out to our construction team to confirm that.
And could that approval process or the procurement process, could that delay the removal of either engine?
Only if the airline, if there's a delay with the airline. If the airline is completed as planned and there are no hiccups with that installation of that connection.
That's the aeration pipeline from plant number 3.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Once that's complete, then there's more flexibility in the electrification schedule.
Okay. But if we've heard testimony that there could be, you don't know 100% that
Right.
that's going to work. If it doesn't, then is there an issue, possibly an issue with delays for the increments that you have proposed on Exhibit 12 for the removal of the one engine, at least by January 31st, 2020?
I don't believe so.
Okay. What about piping work or ducting work or any other kinds of foundational work before the removal of one engine and the installation of at least one electrical blower? Is there work that needs to be done that we could put an increment of progress date on completion before January 31st, 2020? I'm looking for anything in the construction schedule that could ensure some milestone to make sure that that you are on track for the January 31st, 2020 date.
Yeah. Go ahead and just say it.
Oh, I would need to confer with our construction group to make sure I don't make a commitment that can't be met. So I don't know if we can have a few minutes to look at something that could possibly be proposed in between.
That would be good. And also, I want to make sure, my only other question, I'm sure other board members have questions as well. My only other question would be, what degree of certainty do you have that the increments in exhibit number 12 will be met? Because we definitely wouldn't want to adopt them and then have to come back and modify in the future.
I don't know if I can put a percentage on that, but we tried to, ensure that there was some float in the dates to accommodate for any small delays. So unless it's something really substantial, we should not have any issues meeting these dates.
Okay. Board members, would you like to ask your questions now, or should we take a few moments to see if there are any additional increments that might be able to be proposed? Should we? I'm sorry? You have questions? Okay. Why don't we go ahead and we could take that maybe on a break. Ms. Verdugo-Peralta has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, in reviewing the materials, and I'm looking at this aerial overview, which Highway 79 is it off of? Is it the North 79 or South 79 in Temecula? Because there's two.
Is that I'm sorry, is that an exhibit? Oh, yes, it is.
Yes,
It's
number
exhibit 8.
Exhibit number 8,
Board
sorry.
members, exhibit number 8. And we'll let the parties get oriented to that.
And I'll tell you why I'm asking in a second, if you know.
Do you have, let me see if I can find that map, just so I'm looking at the same thing.
Which one
Oh, it's that one.
is this one?
I would say north. It's the Winchester
Okay,
Road.
okay.
The 79 South would be like 2 exits further south.
Right,
It's
it
kind
would
of
be
disconnected.
Temecula Parkway.
Yes, so it's not
It's
Temecula
off of
Park.
Winchester then.
It's Winchester,
Okay.
yes.
The reason I ask you that is because on the south side of 79, there's a question of whether it's jurisdiction under the city of Temecula, or if it's not incorporated, then it would be under jurisdiction of the county of Riverside. And so that goes to my next question, which would be, now, there's not a permit per se that would be requested or required from the city, but it would be an inspection. So all of that inspection, all the inspections, have they been completed, or are you still looking to the city for inspections?
I would have to verify with other staff on whether there's any pending inspections.
Okay, because that could be a possible delay there. My other question goes to also a possible delay in, when you're talking about on page 11 of your exhibit number 12, regarding the unplanned underground utilities, the underground conduit.
I'm
That-
sorry, exhibit number 12, are you talking about exhibit number 11?
No,
The
exhibit-
PowerPoint presentation?
I'm sorry, yes,
Okay, that's
Yes, I'm
exhibit
sorry.
11, sorry.
page 11 of exhibit number 11.
I think it's after.
Right. On the unplanned underground utilities, when they're laying the underground conduit, they have a schedule. Have you contacted Edison Planning Department to see if it's on a schedule and what that schedule would be? A project, because they go out, if it's something this large, they're going to go out 2 or 3 months.
As far as I'm aware, and I will verify this, the conduit is not, does not rely on any activity from Edison. It's internal to the facility.
Okay, so you're not requiring an Edison planner to come out there and conduct an inspection? That's already been done, or you're not requiring it?
I need to verify.
Okay, because like I'm saying, that's a possible delay there. So I would really like to see if you can verify that and what that projection would be, and make sure you get, if it is required, that you get on their schedule.
Yeah, we try not to rely too much on Edison because we do know that there can be substantial delays with Edison. But
Exactly.
I'm not aware of this project relying on Edison, but I would like to verify that.
I think Mr. Javier could perhaps answer that question, but why don't we, do you want him to do it now or hold?
That, if he can answer that question, you can introduce him, and we can put him in the mix. I think
Great, thank
that
you.
makes sense.
Call Alfred Javier.
Yes.
State your name and spell your name for the record.
Alfred Javier, that's A-L-F-R-E-D. Javier is Javier.
And were you sworn as a witness earlier this morning?
Yes, I was.
And what's your position with Eastern Municipal Water District?
I'm the Director of Environmental and Regulatory Compliance.
Okay. And you heard Ms. Verdugo Peralta's question. Do you have some information that would shed some light on a response?
Yes, for Edison, they only go up to the substation. Everything, like Ms. Torres has indicated, is internal. We do have our own locator staff as well as builts that are located, that we can look at maps, that we can verify the underground utilities. However, some of these as-built are not as-built. So those are the things that we are, that could be unexpected. There are things that are, since this has been built, that they've been built over. As Ms. Torres says, this is a small footprint, so there are many underground connections that are being done throughout that plant, and sometimes they are not identified. But for the most part, we have a majority of those have been identified, but we do come across some things that are not there in our plans.
Thank you. My other question has to do with oversight. Also on page 11, when you were referring to Eastern Metropolitan Water District has the right staff with the right expertise overseeing the project. Is the consultant still on contract to provide any oversight, or is that contract done?
No, we still have a engineering firm that's along with construction that oversees.
Okay, and then my last question has to do with the technology advancement group from here at AQMD. They are also providing oversight or not? Are they done? I know that it was a pilot program originally, so.
Oh, yeah, the Technology Advancement Office is not providing any
Okay, so there's
oversight.
no AQMD staff at all that it is providing any oversight at all, other than receiving the reports?
Right, receiving the reports, and then we are required under the current conditions to do some notifications prior to the removal, so that gives the opportunity for an inspector to come either during or after to verify and ask questions.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Can I go back to the one question you're asking about the county and city also, that over the permits and such?
Inspection.
Inspections. We are special districts. The only thing that we do with the county and city is they are given the grading plans, but constructions of the buildings, electrical, and all the apertures to that is done under Easterns, and we do have an inspection group that does that.
Thank you very much.
Senator, you have questions?
Simple question. Permit conditions for one engine and the other engine. What is the description? Something slightly different. What does that mean? Of the engine.
I'm sorry, are you looking at the
Description.
actual permits?
Yes, it says the equipment description on permit number 1 and permit number 2. Why they're not identical?
Okay, I think what we are looking at is the original petition.
Right.
The permits are attached. What permits are those?
Attachment 1 and attachment, exhibit 1, exhibit 2.
Are these for the original engines, the digester gas engines?
The description of the equipment is slightly different. I don't know what that really means.
Excuse me, are you referring to attachment 1A, the permit to operate?
Yeah, it's called Exhibit 1 in this case. It describes the equipment description for each of the engines.
I think the best answer for that is that it's just on timing on when the permit was issued or if there was any modification to the permit. So Exhibit 1 is the blower number 1 engine, and there was a period of time where we were converting the air fuel ratio controller to another type, and we were kind of in a transition phase, and so the permit allowed for us to use either controller, but the Exhibit 2 for blower number 3 engine only has the newer controller listed.
They both were issued on December 5, 2017.
Yeah, that, the date on the top right of the permit is not always representative of the actual issuance of the permit, because Title V issues it as a complete package. So if we made a change to a different piece of equipment at the facility that was in Section D, such as an odor scrubber, the district staff would reissue the complete Section D with a new date, even if there were no changes to other equipment in that section, if that makes sense.
So the function is the same essentially.
Yes. Yeah, these engines are essentially identical, and they have the same
So
controls.
that you do not anticipate any problem when you install the engine number one or replace it, and you discover what could go wrong, or right or wrong, that the same conditions will not exist for engine number two, is what you're saying.
Right, number 1 and 3, they're essentially the same.
They have a projected schedule milestone here, but you also talk about, despite your efforts, things could go wrong. Procurement delay, weather delay, unplanned underground utilities, and plant tree aeration supply. If those things are going wrong, then your projected milestone schedule is off, is that correct? Could be off.
It could be, but there is some, a little bit of float in there to allow for short delays.
I don't know what you mean by a little bit.
What's that?
I don't know what you mean by a little bit.
Well, the contractor usually will, when they put their schedule together, they'll put like a early start or a late start date for the different steps in the project to accommodate for any short delays, just to
Time
give a little
delay.
bit of,
Some time delay in terms of
Yes.
performance.
yes,
Yeah, but that could overrun too, you see.
it could.
Right, so that, in the event that it does, I'm not saying it's going to, then the June 30th, 2020, going to be not, that scheduled date will not be met. There's a chance that it could not be met, based on what you've described here in your proposal.
If we're moving in that direction, I believe in advance of that, we would have to come back to the hearing board and request additional time, which isn't why we're here today.
Your report is impressive, to me at least, but this also provide for an amendment incorporated in the report should things don't go as scheduled, which is good. And you'll know in advance because of the meetings that you will have from time to time with the contractor.
Right,
That's
the
okay,
progress, yeah, sorry,
That's all right. Okay, well, thank you.
thank you.
And we will, as indicated, take a break so that the petitioner can take a look and see, number one, clarify that, in fact, they do anticipate meeting the deadlines, milestones in exhibit number 12 that are being proposed, and number two, if there's anything within their control, including procurement, foundational piping, what have you, that can be added as another increment. But I'll take other questions now. Yeah.
You want to do it? I can wait till after the break.
What would you prefer?
Let me go ahead and ask in case.
Okay, Mr. Balagopalan has questions.
Ms. Torres, the two engines currently also a heat source for the digesters.
Yes, we do have a boiler, a natural gas boiler that also provides a backup, as a backup heat source, but the engines are the primary. So once they're removed and we lose that backup, we need to have another backup for the winter months. So that's where we'll use a small 1 million BTU temporary boiler that's exempt from permitting.
So when you say temporary, is that going to be taken off? I mean, as needed, you're going to use it. Is that what do you mean by temporary, or?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It will be used as a backup during the construction period. We do have another project to install a more permanent boiler as a result of removing these engines. So that will be a separate project, and it won't be, the construction of this won't be impacted by that project.
And what's the time frame from that? I mean,
We are We are also making expedited efforts for that project, so we are pre-procuring that boiler. It's actually 2 boilers. We're pre-procuring that, and we will have to get permits for that. So we're looking at the first quarter of next year.
So the digested gas that were going to the engines will now be used for the boilers?
No, those will actually only be natural gas boilers, yeah.
So where is the digested gas going to go? You're going to have excess digested gas now because you're not burning in 2 and 3.
Yes, unfortunately, we will no longer be able to use that gas. We will have to flare it in our permitted flare until we do have another long-term project, utilization project to use that gas elsewhere, but that's a longer timeline.
So what's the net, have you done the net impact of this changes? Is there going to be an increase in emissions by flaring?
Well, when you consider that the engines are taken offline, I don't think there will be a net increase in emissions.
Even though because the current engines are controlled to some extent, but not to the level required by 1110 point.
Yeah, they don't have any after treatment control, like no, they don't have a catalyst to meet the 1110.2 limits. So they are, the flare, I believe, has lower emissions compared to the engines alone. Now, if you had to still if we were to install new engines, as discussed in the previous hearing, that were natural gas and flare, then the net change is different, if that makes sense.
But that's not the case because these are electric blowers?
Exactly, yeah, that's not the case because these are electric.
Right, okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I thought there was some control on the current engines, no? I mean, the demonstration project and so forth, but it was not as effective as it needed to be to comply with the rule limit. So that's why you decided to forego that route and go to electrification.
Right, it wasn't as effective, but because it wasn't effective, it was not left in place. So now you're referring to the NOx
So currently,
tech?
it's not been controlled at all, the NOx emissions
Well,
from the
it's
engines?
controlled by an air-fuel ratio controller, and it meets its current permit limits, but the
Not the
1110.2 limits are lower. The 1110.2 limits are basically equivalent to a natural gas engine, and with the air-fuel ratio controller alone, it doesn't meet those limits.
So about, I looked at your March report, so you have an excess emissions about 400 pounds a month from the 2 engines roughly?
Combined for all 3 pollutants?
No, just for NOx, sorry. Yeah, I should have clarified.
Let me look. Oh, no, I don't have that report in front of me. That sounds, I'm sorry. No, it's the submitted reports. I think it's about 12 pounds a day.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
So you're saying that excess emission will be, I'm just trying to see the net, when the project is over and you're flaring it,
Yeah.
which is a waste of, in a sense that the resource is not being utilized, and you're flaring it and there's emissions from the flare, even though I think you're putting in a new flare which meets the requirements for the lower NOx limits, or you're using the existing flare?
The existing flare meets the flare requirements. I'd have to, maybe on the break, try to get more information to answer your question on the net change. So we would like to still be able to use the gas, and so we have plans to do that at a different location. But in light of the deadline in 1110.2, and to provide more flexibility in aeration, that's one of the reasons to electrify the blower building. We just unfortunately have a time gap in between the projects that will require us to flare the gas in between.
And just a reminder, while we can get that information, and it's good for us to know, it's not our jurisdiction to consider which is a project, rather just whether or not there are rule violations and whether the 6 findings were met. But that's already been done, actually. It's just modification.
I just had one. The emergency engine that you're installing, that, you said you saw the draft now, that's going to be the backup for the two new electrical blowers at
Yeah, so the blower building will have the dual core electric blowers, and so if there is any outage, Edison outage, then yes, that backup generator will provide for that process.
also building 3 or just 1 and 2?
Just 1 and 2, building 3 actually has plant 3 blower building has its own generator, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I had one other question. It's really towards what incentives there might be for Eastern Municipal to move this project quickly. Do you happen to know, you mentioned, you testified that there have been 2 quarterly reports for excess emissions fees. Do you happen to know what those fees were?
I think they were about 16,000 a quarter.
Okay.
I have them somewhere in all my papers.
And are there other, that you know of, are there any other costs associated with this project continuing as opposed, that would end, significant costs, that would end as soon as the project concludes?
No. Well, there's some natural gas costs, but the engines are primarily digester gas, which is,
If the answer is no,
Yeah,
I'm just wondering.
yeah, no, I think it's primarily the excess emission fee. So of course, those would stop once we remove the engines, so that is a motivation.
Thank you. Senator, do you have a question?
Exhibit 11, which part of your report, presentation today, and we look at page 11, you talk about recurring progress meetings with the contractor, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And then on page 13, which is quite significant and well thought in advance, the monthly update reports to the district, and by the 7th of each month. So what I see here, and I think I'm interpreting it correctly, if there's a problem, a delay based on these procurement, weather, et cetera, that's occurring or likely to occur, you would report that to the district, right?
yes,
And therefore, that being the case, we'll have early notice that these dates are going to slip.
yes.
Okay. In advance. All right, thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else have any questions before we take a break? Any other questions? Okay. Then let's take a 15-minute break. Will that be sufficient? Or would you like a longer break?
No, that's fine.
Well, no, it's really for Eastern Municipal to answer
Yeah.
the questions.
Well, as long as I can contact the right people.
Why don't we take that break till 20 after, and if there are any issues and we need a longer break, just please let us know.
Okay, thank you.
And again, we're just looking for any additional increments that could be put on, but we don't want to tie you down to something that can't be met so that we're back here. We're just looking for additional information, and also the information that Ms. Verdugo-Peralta had requested.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on break until, we're off the record until 20 after 10. We're off the record. Okay. Don't want to kill anyone. We're back on the record. Mr. Coleman, I don't know if you wanted to present anything additional.
Yes, I recall Allison Torres. During the break, Ms. Torres, were able to get in contact with the construction, the people who are monitoring the construction operations.
Yes.
Do you have anything additional to propose to the hearing board?
The only thing that we can propose is to add a increment of progress to commence the installation of the airline pipe by the end of September.
Now, is this something that EMWD has control over, or is it the contractor's responsibility to determine the timing on that?
It is the contractor's responsibility based on the contract documents. However, we have progress meetings and things of that nature to keep them on target.
Okay, and does that date include some time in there in case there are some minor delays encountered?
Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say, though, that the installation of the airline pipe from Plant 3 to Plant 2 and 1 is a key component of this whole construction project to electrify to install the electric blowers?
Yes, in a expedited fashion.
Right. Did you get any other information? I think there was another outstanding question regarding additional inspections that might be required by Edison.
Yes, there was a question about SCE, any SCE work or inspections. There is no SCE work, but there will be an SCE inspection at the end of the project for closed transition for the generator. But that will not necessarily impact the installation of the electric blowers. But as Al Javier mentioned, we have internal inspection staff, so we don't have city inspections and things of that nature.
May I ask a quick question? Now, will you be digging up piping?
There may be, taking up piping, there might be some for the tie-ins, there might be some excavation for the tie-ins, but most of the above-ground piping is, most of the interconnection with Plant 3 is above ground. So there is some areas where we have to connect to existing piping that might be underground, but some is above grade.
And will you have a consultant to see if there's asbestos?
Yes, we will do any asbestos surveys required.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the date for the installation of the aeration pipeline that you propose?
Oh, September 30th, 2019.
Thank you. Is that all the direct on this?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to clarify, that was to commence the installation of that.
And the way we would state that is commence installation of the aeration pipeline from Plant 3 to Plant 1, is it? I'm sorry?
1 and 2.
1 and 2, by September 30th, 2019.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Plant 1 and Plant 2.
From Plant 3 to Plant 1 and 2 by September 30th, 2019.
I know.
Well, it's
I'm sorry.
probably the Plant 1 and 2 blower building, right?
Okay, so Plant 3 blower building to Plants 1 and 2 blower buildings?
I don't know that I would specify blower building because it's a tie-in at another location, not necessarily in the blower building.
Okay, so is it accurate to say commence installation of the aeration pipeline from plant 3 to plants 1 and 2?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Pruitt, did you have any additional questions?
Just the one follow-up. So if there was asbestos, you have someone there who would notify the district?
If there was asbestos, we would follow 1403 and do the notifications required.
Thank you.
Mr. Balagopalan?
Ms. Allison, so that connection from the airline connection from 3 to 1 and 2, is that going to be stay permanent, or is that a
Yes, it's permanent.
permanent? Okay, so all right, thank you.
Senator?
On page 10, project schedule milestone, where does that fit in, that aeration pipe connection fit on the schedule?
That fits into the install new interconnection air pipe and tie-in, so the third milestone task.
You said September the 30th.
Oh, right here.
Okay,
But it's contingent on the aeration pipe delivery, which is the 4th.
do you need another bar in there? Or the one you have, where it truncate, where's it cut off? Where's it continue to? You got October 19th?
Yeah, what we're proposing is within the third bar.
The third bar, all right. And that'll be September the 30th.
Yes. So right now, they're working on some of the concrete structural work on outside the above-ground footings, because this will be an above-grade pipe. So they have to build pipe supports and structures to hold the pipe.
You need another description of that action? Or the ones that you have there applies to it?
I believe the one that we have applies because it's the high-level milestone, and there's subtasks within that bar.
I wouldn't know about the subtask. All I see is the bar, and it goes over to November 1st, October 19th, November 19th.
If you look below on 4th, it says aeration pipeline material delivery. So the pipeline cannot be installed until after the pipeline delivery. That's why we were saying the pipeline connection for the aeration pipeline.
Okay, you need another bar then. You need another description. That's what I think. Describing the action after aeration pipe material delivery. Because you got to have this installation. Now you're talking about the installation.
Okay.
You need another bar. Okay.
Is there a question?
Just told she agrees she needs another bar.
Okay. Ms. Verdugo Peralta has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, in regards to the final inspection by Edison regarding the enclosed transition for the generator, have you already gotten on their schedule through the San Jacinto District Planning Department, or are you planning to? Has there been a discussion of getting on their schedule for that?
I'm not the one who would schedule that inspection, so I need to verify. I apologize for that. I can send a quick text message.
Right, because that would be another place where there could be a delay, unless you're on their schedule as well.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Edison does have a wait.
Any other questions? I think I had one and now it's escaping me. Does anyone else have a question at this time? All right, give me a moment to think of whether I can find the question I had. Okay. The question I had, I want to understand with certainty because I asked this question before, but I'm not sure I do know the answer with certainty. During your presentation, just looking for the right presentation, you mentioned on page 11 with the expedited efforts that despite our efforts, there is potential for unexpected situations to occur, such as, and listed is the Plant 3 aeration supply. And we know that that you have testified that there is a potential that that will not do what you needed to do, or will not work, or will be delayed, et cetera. I did want to understand the degree of certainty that you have, even if that does happen, of meeting the increments of progress that you have proposed on Exhibit 12. Or are those increments of progress also dependent upon that pipeline aeration supply from Plant 3?
I believe that even if things go wrong with the airline pipe, we will provide the district with advance notice through our monthly reports, and we will at that time be able to truly evaluate if there is a negative impact to these increments of progress and come back to the hearing board. But at this time, we feel confident that we can meet these increments of progress.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Senator?
You have installed new interconnection aeration pipe and tie-in. How can you do that if you have not received the material?
I'm sorry that milestone is creating confusion. There are different activities that take place as part of that installation, which include the pipe as well as the pipe footings, pipe supports, different above-ground activities. So all that is included in that bar. So that hopefully that's enough of an explanation for why that might be confusing.
And the pipe material delivery, that's included also? Aeration pipe material delivery?
Yeah, we were just calling that out as a separate item because receiving the pipe is key to being able to install it's a 36-inch pipe, but there's other components to that interconnection that are included in that overall task in that third bar.
You put the connections in place before you get the pipe, is that correct? You provide for it.
Well, there's certain
fitting.
activities they can do with like above ground concrete footings to
Okay.
hold the
All right.
pipe supports and different things like that.
You provide to accommodate it once you get it.
Yes.
Okay, fine. And then, of course, you install the pipe once you get the pipe because you've provided accommodation for it. Once you get the pipe, then you install.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry about that confusion.
thank you. Hard to figure out.
Any other questions, board members? Oh, okay, thank you. Mr. Coleman, any other witnesses?
No.
Okay. Ms. Pruitt, any witnesses?
No, thank you.
Okay. Was there anything else we need to tie up, board members, before we ask for public comment and ask for closing? The district has no witnesses.
I know, I'm kind of confused here.
Good, you want to put on your microphone so you're on the record?
Yeah, because if it's determined after all these hearings between the district, AQMD and the contractor, they discover there's going to be a delay, and yet they meet with the district once a month, and then if they subsequently is determined that the proposed additional increments of progress is not going to be delayed, then who would ask to come back to the board and at what period of time?
Wait, let's take that one at a time. There was no delay at this point.
I said, it's conditional.
You're talking about moving forward if there's a delay in the additionally proposed increments of progress that we are considering today. then it would be incumbent upon the petitioner, Eastern Municipal, to come before the board and request a modification and present their case at that time. Is that the answer that you were looking for? Okay. Okay, then I'm going to ask if there's any member of the public who's present who wishes to be heard on this matter. And I see none, and I'm going to turn it to Mr. Coleman for your closing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We think there's good cause. Well, first of all, we are here today to, as we have indicated, to let the hearing board know this project is on schedule. We are hopeful that the engines can be removed from service prior to the date that was originally provided in the order, but there is some uncertainty involved. And as a result of that uncertainty, we had to provide some additional increments of progress that we believe we still can meet, even if we encounter some delays or the connection between Plant 3 and the Plant 1 and 2 digesters, aeration system does not work as, or isn't completed on schedule, or doesn't work as planned. We are hopeful that this project will move forward expeditiously and ahead of schedule. And at the board's request, we have agreed to an additional increment of progress related to the aeration tie-in between Plant 3 and Plants 1 and 2. And we think this, along with the additional 3 that we had proposed, provide a series of steps that along the way, where if it looks like there's going to be a problem early on, we can identify it, and if relief is needed in the form of modification of the increments, we'll have time to come back to the hearing board and do that. However, we did propose these increments with the idea that we are not expecting to have to come back to the hearing board. We expect to meet these increments. We think there's good cause to include these increments in a modified variance order to assure that there are identifiable steps on the road to compliance. And we look forward to continuing to provide the district with the information it needs to monitor progress toward compliance and complete this project.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Ms. Pruitt, closing?
Yeah, I understand that there is some degree of uncertainty, but speaking with understanding Mr. Coleman's position and the statements and the chart, it seems that Eastern Municipal Water District has anticipated any potential delays and has accounted for them as best they can, which is reasonable. And based upon that, we have no objection to the proposed increments.
Thank you. Board members, I think there's a lot of good cause and good news, I think, in this matter as follows. First of all, the petitioner was here 2 years before it originally estimated that the project would be completed in June of 2020, and they are still on track to do that. And I think that's very good. And all of the conditions and any of the increments that were adopted have been complied with, further keeping petitioner on track. There's also some incentive based on the overall cost of this project. It's not that much of an incentive. However, it's still an incentive of $16,000 approximately per quarter to make sure that this is on track, and that's in terms of excess emission fees. So that's some incentive. And I do also believe that we heard evidence that they have worked hard to come back to us with dates and increments that we had asked for, and then again added one during the course of the hearing to try and further ensure that they remain on track. And given the evidence that we heard today and testimony, I think there's good cause for each of them, and with the potential of modification if it were necessary. Anyone else? Mr. Balagopalan?
I agree. I think we can find good cause in this variance, and I think the proposed additional incremental progress indicates that just clarity in how they're going to achieve the deadline of June 30th. So I think the intention we heard was they're hoping to replace both engines at the same time, but I think they're already preparing with the blower from Building 3 to supply the aeration for the aeration tank. So I think so they can phase it out one at a time, or they may be able to do both. So I think the timeline. So this provides a good timeline. I think from testimony, I think they built in the anticipated delays here. So I don't think we expect them to go beyond June 30th, and comply. So so in that I commend them for being on track and keeping, moving forward and giving us and providing the updates.
And Ms. Verdugo-Peralta?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Overall, in looking at the previous hearings on this project, I think Eastern Municipal Water District should be commended for the efforts that you have made to push technology. And even though the first part of it was a failure, you still not only committed the staff, but committed the dollars that were required, and working with the district to push this technology and get a better, more efficient, and emission-reducing plant altogether. That being said, I still have concerns that, two of them actually. One is that you make sure that you get on schedule with the parties that need to be, such as Edison, because they themselves, as you well know, have huge projects, many projects, and unless you get on their schedule months ahead of time, it'll delay you. That and the only other concern I have is, in talking to Mohan earlier, is the flaring project, and the fact I'm disappointed that you can't utilize those gases for any other project, but I understand it. It's just that I live in Temecula, so I have always been bragging about, well, we have no source of emissions. Well, I do now, unfortunately. But I do commend this, all of the efforts that you have done, and I am very happy to see that this project overall is going to be completed. Just be aware of your schedule. Hopefully no delays. We can go forward, and I also find good cause. Thank you.
Senator?
I think they've done a good job trying to put it together, and that the target dates will be met, and if they're not, it's beyond their control, the district's control. It would be something that the contractor could not, the schedule that the contractor could not maintain for various reasons. And they've been identified in the report. So all you can do, and that's the best you can do. And beyond that, it's out of your control, and you shall not be held accountable for that, in my view. We should go forward.
Dr. Bernstein?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know EMWD to be a exemplary special district and providing an integral and important public service, and represents its constituents and its ratepayers appropriately. Thrown a curveball at the beginning in reviewing the previous hearings with regards to trying to implement technology to improve air quality. And from my perspective, you have established good cause from the very beginning regarding the incremental progress and moving towards to bringing this project to fruition. So I don't, in my mind, you've done a good job of integrating the things that are actually out of your control. to make this as fluid a process as possible. And so I find that you've established good cause regarding the issue today. And congratulations on your efforts and best of luck in completing the project on time or even before. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna propose a motion in the matter of Eastern Municipal Water District, case number 4937-57. I move that we find good cause to incorporate and modify the existing regular variance to include additional increments of progress, as I will specify in a moment. I further move that we modify the findings and decision of the hearing board that exists from June 28th. Well, it was signed in July, but from the hearing in June 28th, 2018 as follows. First, on the first page, I would like to reflect that not just was the petition for regular variance heard on June 28th, 2018, but also that status/modification hearings were held on, I think it was April 9th. Is that the correct date? April 9th, thank you. April 9th, 2019 and August 6th, 2019. In addition, I move that we reflect painstakingly, as the clerk has already begun, which members of the board were present at which hearings. I further move that we add on what is now page 3. There is no numbered lines, but right above the paragraph that begins, conditions have been imposed in the variance order to assure. At the end of the paragraph before that, I'd like to propose or move that we add 2 factual sentences about today's hearing. And that would be first, at the August, not first, that would be, quote, at the August 6th, 2019 hearing, comma, EMWD presented the baseline construction schedule submitted by the contractor in July 2019, period. Based on that information and other testimony presented, EMWD proposed 4 additional increments of progress, period. The hearing board found good cause to incorporate those increments into the variance. Okay, maybe there were 3 sentences. I will. I further move that we incorporate the 4 increments of progress into the existing order as follows. Currently, what is page 10 has C 1, 2, and 3. We'll leave those as they are since they've already passed. And we will add number 4 as follows. 4 will be petitioner shall commence installation of the, and is it, I'm sorry, aeration pipeline or airline pipeline? I've heard 2 different.
It's somewhat interchangeable, but you can say aeration.
Okay. Petitioner shall commence installation of the aeration pipeline from plant 3 to plants 1 and 2 by September 30th, 2019. I further move that we add, increment of progress C5 to read petitioner shall complete removal of at least 1 engine by January 31st, 2020. Condition number 6, increment of progress, number 6, will be petitioner shall commence installation of electric blowers by February 28th, 2020. And increment of progress, number 7, will be petitioner shall complete installation of at least one electric blower by April 30th, 2020. And that completes my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Verdugo Peralta seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Senator, how do you vote? Aye. Dr. Bernstein, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Balagopalan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Verdugo Peralta?
Aye.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you and good luck. Any other business, board members, before we adjourn? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.